In this video, we'll create a basic interaction system for our player and add a treasure chest scene that will work with our resource-based inventory system, which we built in previous videos. Hi, my name is Michael, and welcome to my 2D action and adventure RPG tutorial series. We are learning how to build a top-down 2D game that features action, adventure, and RPG mechanics all in Godot 4 using GDScript. Let's begin today by working on our player just a little bit. So our player needs to be set up to be able to interact with items. So far we've set him up to be able to move and attack and things like that, but not to be able to interact with things. So let's open our player scene. And in our previous tutorials, we actually had added this interactions node, right? And we actually added a script as well that would rotate it based on the direction of our player. And we're going to be able to use that. It'll be perfect for our needs here. But if you need to go revisit that, or if you want to just look at this script here and see what the script does, we'll go ahead though with our interactions. Let's add a child node to this interactions node. And this child should be an area 2D. Oops, I didn't add it as a node or as a child of interactions. Let me drag it in there. Okay, area 2D. And we need a collision shape for that, of course. Collision shape 2D. And on this collision shape 2D, let's give it just a rectangle shape. Should be good. And I'm going to change the color to kind of a greenish color. You can do whatever you want, but to me that means interaction. Now let's go ahead also and let's just position this area down 6 pixels or so on the y-axis, so it's kind of in front of the player there. And you can make this bigger if you want it to be bigger, but this will also, the area that's interactable will also kind of depend on the object, so I'm not too worried about that here. We're going to set our monitoring on the area 2D off. It's only going to be monitorable, and then let's adjust our collision layers, and this should be on a new layer. Let's pick layer 3, and let's go ahead and edit the layer names. Let's give this layer, let's call it player interact, maybe. Okay, go ahead and close that. And then, yeah, no layer masks, so just that one layer, and then we're good to go. And so what will happen is obviously as our player rotates, this should rotate. And let's go ahead and let's turn our debugging, our visual or visible collision shapes on, and let's just test our game real quick. So this green box, yeah, it's rotating with our player. Okay. So that'll just be a little bit area just right in front of the player where he can interact with things, or we'll use to detect if he's within that interactable space. And actually, before we can really use this interact shape, let's set up a way for the player, the game, the person playing the game, to be able to use the interact. So I'm going to go into our project settings and our input map. We don't have an input map for interact, so let's add that action. And then you can go ahead and pick whatever keys you want for this. I don't know, I might put S on the keyboard. I don't know. I'm not really sure. Pick what you want, but then I'm going to go ahead and add the triangle on my PlayStation controller, and that'll map to Xbox and Nintendo as well. There we go. We've got an interact set up. And then we want to kind of take this interact button just a little bit full circle. The way I think I'd like to handle it in this case is starting with our player manager. So let's see. I've just got too many little folders open. So within our player folder, we've got scripts. And then we've got, oh, actually, no, the player manager is in our globals. Let's go there. So let's see, global player manager. Now within this global player manager, I want to add a signal that we'll call interact pressed. And then this way, any interactable thing can listen for this signal as is needed. And we're not actually going to emit that signal from this script right now. It'll just be a signal that's accessible to our player. Then if we look at our player, we only want him to be able to interact if he's idle or maybe while he's walking, but not while he's attacking or anything like that. So for that reason, I'm going to add the detection for this button pressed within these states. So here in the player's idle state, I'm going to add a new if statement. So if our event is action pressed interact, then what we can do is just go to our player manager and then get that interact pressed signal and just call emit on it. I'm going to go ahead and copy that, and let's go to our player walk state and go to his handle input. There we go. And just add that same line of code so that now if we're walking past something that's interactable and and whatnot, or just actually, even if we're not by something that's interactable, but just as we're walking or idle, if we press triangle, it's going to emit this signal. So I think that covers everything that we need right now on just our player. So next, what we want to do then is create our treasure chest scene that we're going to use. And you can place this wherever you would like, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new folder for our interactable type scenes. So I'll just call this interactables, I guess. It sounds like an 80s toy, or 90s. I don't know. Maybe you guys are too young for that, but interactables. Okay, so inside this interactables folder, I'm going to create a new folder for our treasure chest. And let's go ahead and open this guy in our file manager. And now you can go to my itch.io page to download the assets you will need for this, or you can create your own or use your own. So I'm going to I've got a sound file, treasure-open.wav, and I've got a PNG, just a simple sprite sheet for the treasure chest. So I'm going to put both of those in this folder. Go back to the project. Okay, there we go. We've got those two items. So let's create a new scene in here, and we'll just call it treasure chest. And it's fine if the root type is a 2D scene. Okay, treasure chest scene. That's open. And let's go ahead while we're here creating stuff. Let's just create a script for it. Call it treasure chest. And drop that on there. Okay, let's set up all the nodes that we're going to need in our treasure chest. We're going to leave the root node as just a node 2D, and then we'll just add all the required things underneath it. So let's add, first let's add our sprite 2D. So this will display, obviously, our treasure chest texture. There we go, looking good. And this only has 2 frames. If yours has more, then you can adjust that appropriately. And let's go ahead and add another sprite actually to our scene. And this sprite is going to be used to display like the item that comes out of the chest when we open it. So we'll just call this item sprite so that it's easy to keep track of. And both of these, I just want to move them up a little bit. I don't know. Yeah, just move it somewhere around there. We also, within our item sprite, let's go ahead and just add a label scene as well. I mean, this is not maybe a normal way to do this because it's a label is a control UI type scene, but it'll sit right there. We'll go ahead and use that. And let's put some text in there so that if you, let's say you open a chest and there's like hundreds of items or something, or 2, that we can display that to the player. So let's configure this while we're working on it just a little bit. I think horizontal, vertical alignment, let's set that to center. Let's go down to our theme overrides. Font size, I think about 10 pixels might be good. And then I'm going to go in here to colors, and let's check this font shadow color. Black is a good color for that. And then in order for the shadow, well, actually, no, let's do font outline. Yeah, that one will work. And then in order for either of those to show, though, we would have to come into the constants and set these up. So let's go to outline size. And for whatever reason, it needs to be kind of thick to show. So there we go. I set it to a value of 4. Okay, and then for our item sprite too, let's add an atlas texture just so we can preview this while we're working on it. Or you could add whatever texture you need, but I've got these item textures in here. So I'm just going to drag one of those in and set it to 32 by 32. Okay, there we go. So we've got like a standard item, might be a gem, right? Okay, we've got our 2 sprites. Select our root node here, and let's add a couple other things. We want an animation player. We're going to want, let's see, we want an audio stream player 2D. We're going to want 2 other things that are important. So we need a static body 2D. This is so that the player will collide with it. And obviously this needs a collision shape. And for this collision shape 2D, we'll just add a simple rectangle shape to it. And I'm just going to use the select tool to just resize this. I don't want it to be really tall because I want the player to be able to walk behind the chest a little bit. So I'm going to drag it down like that. Drag this out to the sides. Okay, and then let's configure this static body. For our collision, we want the layer to be on layer 5, and it doesn't really need a mask for this. So just layer 5, that's our walls layer. Okay, that'll prevent the player or the enemies from walking through it. Go ahead and save that. Let's add another shape here, or another thing. We need an area 2D. So this area 2D is what's going to allow detection of whether or not the players, within the area to be able to interact with the chest or not. So let's see, area 2D, let's add our collision shape that we need for that to work. And we'll give this a rectangle as well, and give it a greenish color again. I mean, it doesn't really matter too much. And I'm just going to drag this shape to be just a little bit larger than the collision shape. You can experiment with this when you're building yours, but I don't want the player to be able to open it from too far away. Okay, so we've got that collision shape set up. Let's select the area again, and this monitoring should be on, I guess. Monitorable will be off. We don't need it to be anything to monitor this. And then for the collision, we don't need it on a layer, but we do want it to have a mask of layer 3. So I've set this up in a very specific way. If you remember, our player interaction is monitorable on layer 3, and this is monitoring on layer 3. So this will limit it so that these two areas they're very specifically set up to be able to interact with each other and with nothing else, which makes our code a little bit easier. And so that's kind of how I like to do things. If you have way too many layers, that could become overcomplicated. But for most basic games, I think this is a very simple way to set up your collisions so that you don't get, mixed collisions, like the attack box accidentally triggering the treasure chest to open, or weird things like that, right? We're using our layers very strategically here, as well as our monitor settings. Okay, so I think we've got everything. Let me go through the list of items we've got. Sprite 2D, item sprite 2D, animation player, auto stream, static body, area 2D. We've got our basic treasure chest set up. And in fact, let's go ahead and let's open one of our levels. Let's see, where's levels folder? I'm going to open level 1 and come up here and grab our treasure chest scene. And I'm going to just add actually a couple of these. So real quick, I'm going to take these item pickups that we've been testing with earlier. And I'm just going to delete those. Okay, treasure chest. Let's just put 3 of these here. So let's start one there. Let's duplicate that twice. Select 2 of them, move them over. And select this last one and move it. So now if we run our game, it's going to look a little goofy right now. There we go. You can see our player can walk around them and not through them. Cool. I think that's looking good. Let's go ahead and turn our visible collision shapes off. I don't think that's going to be useful anymore right now. And yeah, looking good. Okay, so let's work on this treasure chest some more. Let's set up the animations that we're going to need, and let's just grab our animation player. We'll make a new animation, and we'll call this one closed. So this is kind of the default state, right? This is what the treasure chest will look like, obviously, before the player opens it. I'm going to go ahead and set this to autoplay on load so that it will be the default animation that we play. And let's grab our sprite 2D and select that, and then let's go to our frame and let's just key that. Okay, so this is going to be on frame 0, and we want to go to our item sprite, and we're going to want to keyframe this one as well. Let's go to visibility and just turn it off, and we'll keyframe that. Okay, so there we go. We've got just our simple treasure chest, and because we allowed it to, it created reset track, so that's handy. We'll go back to closed. Let's duplicate the closed animation, and let's call this opened. So now this is the state that the treasure chest would be in if it's already been opened. So let's select this frame, and we'll just adjust it, set it to 1, and we'll go to, we'll leave the visibility of the item sprite off. Okay, so this is a chest that has been opened, right? It's not going to do anything special. Let's duplicate that one more time, and we'll call this one open chest. So this will be the actual animation that plays when we open the chest. And this one will be just a little bit more involved. I'm going to go ahead and increase the duration of this timeline to 1.5 seconds because I think we want a little bit of extra time on this one. So we can start actually on the frame 0 where it's closed, and then let's go to around here at 0.1. We'll insert a new keyframe for the sprite and just set it to frame 1. Okay, there we go. So it'll pop open instantly. And obviously, if you had an animation like a chest that had multiple frames of opening, you could put those sequentially in here. Another thing we want to do is as soon as the chest opens, let's insert another keyframe for our item sprite and just set it to visible so that it'll turn on. And we're going to animate our sprite a little bit more, but real quick, let's add an audio playback track. So let's go down to audio playback, select our audio stream player, and then just drag the treasure-open.wav in there. And I'm going to set it right here and just preview that. Okay, cool. Plays the sound when it opens. Okay, so what we want to do as well is we want to give a little bit of I don't know, game juice, some fun animation to this item so that it's not just sitting there, right? We want it to look like it's popping out of the chest, make it a little bit more interesting when we open. So let's go ahead and just start right here on this keyframe where the chest opens and the item becomes visible. Make sure you have your item sprite selected, and let's just keyframe the position, the transform. So I'm going to just hit the key on that and say create keyframe. Okay, so there we go. Now what we want is within just a fraction of a second, I'm going to go to 0.3 here. I'm going to insert a key for another frame, and I'm going to set the value of this to something like, I don't know, negative 60 maybe. Yeah, really pop it up there. I'm actually going to go a little bit further and just use negative 64 because that's a cool number. And then let's go to about half a second. And you could drag this if you want to wherever you think this should be. It's going to pop back down, right? I'm not sure exactly where I want this, but maybe above the chest still. I'm going to set it to, somewhere up here. I'm going to go ahead and key that. So there's two different ways, obviously, you can set these keys, right? You can create them manually, or you can use the little key button. Okay, a little bit of a pop. A little bit of a pop there, and then let's go ahead and just to be safe, I mean, it's playing fine, but I had issues with this. I'm going to duplicate this frame and say duplicate keys. That'll put another one here. That way, if something else happens or we put another keyframe somewhere, sometimes you'll see, oh, actually, I'm doing it right now. See, that's drifting. I actually don't want that. What I meant to do is select this last keyframe and duplicate that one. Okay, there. That way, it'll for sure stay stationary right there, no matter what changes later on in the animation. Okay. And then I want to do one other thing for fun here. I want to select these frames. And so for the intro frame, let's give this like an ease out. So you can right click on the ease and select ease out. And then let's go here, this middle one. I think what we want to do for this one is an ease in and out. And then let's select this guy here, and we'll give this frame or an ease. I think an ease in will look good. Let's go ahead and preview that. There we go. A nice kind of a little whoop bob animation going on there. And let's add yet one more effect to this happening here. I'm going to go to about, I don't know, 0.2 seconds. Select my sprite. I'm going to go down to visibility and just keyframe the modulate. Okay. Now let's go to this frame where it's at its peak of its pop animation, and I'm going to select the modulate. I'm going to change this from RGB to raw, and I'm going to put 2 in all of the values. So this is a brighter than white, and you can see it kind of makes it glow. Okay, so it's going to get bright, and then where it settles back down, drag our playhead there, we'll select the original white color and just duplicate that. So that'll give the effect of it flashing. And we can also, at some point here, we want this item to fade away after it's opened. So maybe around 1 second, we can duplicate the white keyframe and then have it slowly fade out over the remaining half a second. So let's go ahead and insert a key here, and we'll just take this value. We'll leave it white, but we'll drag the alpha down to 0. So now the final animation, yep, the item will fade away. Okay, that looks good. We've got 3 animations: closed, open chest, and opened. And of course, our reset should look nice. And actually, on our reset, I'm going to go ahead and change something here. I want this sprite to be visible on the reset. And you'll see why when we drag this into a scene and start working with it, it's going to pop it into that reset state most likely. So like if we go to scene 1, yeah, we can see the item and the quantity in the chest. We're going to tie these in with our script so that they update as we change it. So it'll be like really easy to see when you're laying out your levels. You'll be able to see what's in the chest and how many, just without needing to select it. So that'll be nice. Now that we've got all of our animations and visuals and everything set up on our treasure chest, it's time for us to work on the script for it. So let's go ahead and open that script. And this script is going to be quite involved, actually. There's a lot going on with the treasure chest. So I'm going to make this a tool script to begin with, because as mentioned, I want to make it so that as we update the item or the quantity, that's reflected in the editor. So, and let's go ahead and give it a class name of TreasureChest, and we should extend a node 2D. Let's export 2 variables. The first one will be our item data. So we'll be leveraging that item data resource that we've created in previous tutorials, and we're going to give this a setter function. Well, we'll just call it set item data. Okay, and so that it doesn't complain at us, I'm going to copy that. I'm just going to make this function down here. Get that going. Wow. Okay. And then let's export another variable. Let's see, this one will be called quantity, just how many items there are. That's an integer. We'll default to 1, and it will also have a setter variable. We'll call that set quantity. Do the same thing down here and just make a placeholder function for it. Now, hopefully our little error warnings up here clear away in a second. Go ahead and save. I think one reason why this is still complaining is we haven't updated the signature to include the parameter that we need to pass in. So for our set item data, that's expecting an item data. And for our set quantity, that's expecting an integer value. There we go. So now those warnings are gone. We can go ahead and kind of get these started. The one obvious line of code that we need in each of these is we need to set our values appropriately, right? So for the item data, we just set the item data to the value that we pass in. And likewise, for our quantity, set quantity function, we'll just set the quantity to the value. And good enough there. That's going to get us started so we can set those. So now if I save this, if we look at our treasure chest, we've got our item data and a quantity. Now this treasure chest is going to have a Boolean variable to track if it's open. So we'll just call this variable is open and set it to false by default. And then let's get a reference to some of our nodes within the treasure chest scene. So let's see, we need our animation player, we need our sprite, we need our interact area, and I actually want to grab this label as well. So let's grab all of those, hold Control, drop them in. Okay, so we've got a reference to each of these. I'm going to rename sprite 2D to just be sprite. And this area 2D, I actually want to call it the interact area, just so I know what I'm using that for. And let's set up our ready function now on this script. I think we're ready for that. So let's go. And we'll just make this pass to start with. Because this is a tool script, we're going to have a point at which we want to stop executing it in the editor. So we'll add an if engine.isEditorHint, and then we'll do a return. That way we have a natural point. Anything that happens in the editor can be called up first, and anything that only happens in game will be called down here. And let's actually set up some of these. So we have an interact area. So we want to connect to the area to 2 signals on this. We've got an area entered signal that we want to connect to. And so we'll make a new function called on area entered. And then let's copy this line, paste it, There's also an area exited signal that we'll connect to. And we'll say on area, I'm just going to call that exit, actually. And I'm going to change this on area enter, on area exit. And that's going to give us this annoying warning until we set these functions up. So let's add them. I don't know why I've got my animation player so big right now. Okay. The on area enter function, obviously it's going to have an area 2D that it's detecting, that it passes in there. So we'll set that up. We'll just say pass. And then I'm going to copy this function and just rename it to on area exit. And there we go. Got our two interaction area handlers. So the reason we want to do this is when the player is within this area, or when his interact area is within this area, then we want to start checking to see if the player is trying to open it or not. But as soon as the player exits the area, we don't want to do that anymore. And as you recall, we've got in our, let's go ahead and close some of these things actually. So we don't need level, don't need player. Okay, let's close our states. Okay, we've just got a few things open here. So our player manager, we added this interact pressed signal. So let's go ahead and start hooking into that. So when the player interact enters this area, then we want to actually connect to that signal. Let's see, what do we call it? I was just there, interact pressed. We'll connect to that. And we need to make a function that we can call, and we'll call the function player interact. And I'm going to actually put that function right here. Okay, so we've got a valid function. And then on area exit, all we want to do is just disconnect. So we'll just change this from connect to disconnect. Okay. So now as soon as the player enters, we're listening, and we'll call this if that button's pressed, and then once they leave, we'll stop trying to call it. So player interact. What's going to happen when the player interacts with the chest? First, we're going to just check if the chest is open. You know, if it's open is true is exactly what we're checking for. So if it's open, we'll return, because we don't want to do anything. Otherwise, we'll just ignore it. But if not, then we'll set is open to true, because now it's going to be open. And we'll grab our animation player and we'll play the open chest animation. And then we want to add the items to our player inventory, assuming we've got them. So let's do a quick check. Make sure that we have an item data, just in case it's null. And make sure that the quantity is set to a value that's greater than 0. Because if there's none, then obviously we can't add anything, and we wouldn't want to subtract. Both of these situations would be kind of an error, right? And so actually we'll handle that. But real quick, let's just finish this. If that is true though, if we've got it, then let's go to our player manager and grab our inventory data, which is in there, and call the add item function. And we just need to pass in the item data and the quantity that we're adding, right? Easy peasy. So that should just work with the existing inventory scripts we've built. If it doesn't pass that, then I'm going to actually show you 2 different ways that you can print an error to the screen. So the first is called printerr. And this is just going to, in the output, it's going to just display an item just as if you had done print, except it's going to be highlighted in red. So we can say no items in chest. I'm going to copy that, and I'm going to show you another one. There's another way we can display an error. We can do push error. And push error is actually going to output in the debugger. So where print will output will be added or printed in the output, this push error is going to show in the debugger, right, under errors. So we'll say no items in chest, and then maybe we just say so that this helps you as a developer. We can tell it what the chest was, right? Let's give it a name or something, or use the name of the instance. Okay, so there we go. So we've kind of set this up for our player to interact with it. I kind of want to get through some of these other scripts before we even try and test, because I feel like there's some important things going on here. Mainly what's left to do is just to assign the items to the chest. as we are editing the game and whatnot. That's going to be pretty easy to do. So let's see, what do we have here? We have set item data, set item quantity. If we look at our treasure chest scene, and I'm just going to set this on the reset animation. See, we've got this gem and the number of items. And if we were to go here, let's say to our scene, right, and we were to add an item data to one of these, and let's say it was potion, right? We would want that to update, and it's not. So let's set that up. So within our set item data, we need to do more than just setting the value here. And in fact, not only do we need to do a little bit more there, but we're going to probably want to call in our onReady function a way to make sure that the texture gets set. For our set item data and set quantity, let's add a couple new functions here. So one function is going to be called update texture. And if you recall, we've done something similar to this with our item drop. This is basically the same thing. So if we have item data and we have a sprite, then we'll go ahead and update them, or update the sprite. So we'll get the sprite.texture and set it equal to the item data.texture. Yep, there we go. That's pretty straightforward. And then we just need to call this function in the set item data function. And then we'll have another function. So set item data will update the texture. Set quantity needs to update the label. So if you recall, we added this label here that's by default displaying times 99. And in fact, what I want to do with this label is if there is only one item, then we won't display this label. We'll only display the label if there's more than one. So let's make a little function in here called update label. And what the update label will need to do, first we'll just check if we have a label, which we should, but this will just prevent it from erroring out in certain circumstances when we're editing. And then we'll just check against the quantity. So if the quantity is less than or equal to 1, then we're going to set the label.text. We'll just set it to an empty string. Else, so if it's not less than 1, if it's 2 or greater, right, then we'll set the label text equal to x plus, and then we'll grab our quantity and convert it to a string right there. Okay, so let's grab this update label function that we've just created. Copy this, set item quantity, we'll call update label, and then in our ready function, we're going to call our update label, and we'll also call our update texture. Okay, so now if we go back to scene 1, oh no, we're updating the wrong sprite. So in our treasure chest, let's open the treasure chest scene as well. When we grab the sprite here, we got a reference to our sprite 2D. That's not the sprite we want to update. We want to update the item sprite. So I'm just going to drag that in there. I'm going to save this. Okay, let's go back to scene 1. Hopefully everything's fixed. There we go. So now we've got a potion. Let's grab treasure chest 2. I'm going to actually leave this one empty for now so that we can test our error that we set up. And then on our third, I'm going to just quick load, just put some stones in there, and 99. Cool. Maybe that's too many. 50. Let's go ahead and run this scene. Let's see what happens here. Okay, so if I come to this first treasure chest, oh my goodness, okay, it opened, it gave me a potion. If I go to this treasure chest on the end that we put the stones in, gave us 50 stones, looking good. Now this one we didn't put an item in, so we should get that error. Yeah, it displayed that little gem, but if we look here in our output, it said no items in chest, and if we look at the debugger, there's an error. TreasureChest Script, line 35, right? No items in chest, and it gave us the instance name TreasureChest 2. So if you were trying to debug that, you would know, oh, okay, that was TreasureChest 2. You can just come find it and fix it. Okay, so I'm going to stop running that. Let's go ahead right now. Now that we tested that error debugging, let's go to our TreasureChest 2, quick load, and then I guess we'll just make it gems. And we'll put like 10, something like that. Run that one more time. Let's just open this middle treasure chest one more time. 10, gave us 10 gems. Okay, so we've finished our treasure chests, and they work pretty good, right? They add items to our inventory as expected. We've got a nice animation and sound effect and everything. We have some issues that we're not going to address today, which are that the treasure chests are refilled as soon as we leave the screen and come back. And of course, if we save our game right now and then load it, treasure chests are back to being closed. So in our next video, we'll address adding kind of a persistent tracking to these treasure chests so that they will stay opened between screens and between save games. I hope you guys learned something new. As always, I appreciate the comments and subscriptions and likes and everything that you do. And hope you're enjoying this content, and please engage with me and let me know how we can make them better and what kind of questions you have. And as always, we'll see you next time.